Hi there. Thank you very much for checking out my videos here on YouTube. I do greatly appreciate it. I thought I'd do a quick little video about my Jaguar X-Type. So traditionally, I do videos about Turo. I am a host up here in Canada, and I'm fairly new at it. I'm about 4 months in, and I thought I would put some videos out on YouTube to help support that community a little bit, and also give back a bit because I've been using some of the information that I get from Turo from the US Turo hosts. And there really isn't a lot of information up in the Canadian market for it. And I think it's well known in the GTA or the bigger centers, but it's not really a common item where I'm at. So I'm in a small rural community. I'm in Atwood, which is about 45 minutes north of Cambridge, Guelph area. So still, it's not that far off the beaten path, essentially. So I'm kind of on that little outskirts. Still a small community. Listowel's right next door, that type of thing. So I thought I'd give a perspective from a tour host in a smaller community, kind of. If you were in the Canadian market, there's going to be more smaller little towns than there would be Toronto, right? So I thought I'd share my information on that. Today, we're going to just do a quick little overview. So it is December 28th. Last week, it was like minus 14 outside, minus 10. Snow, real winter, piles up like you couldn't believe. We've had a couple days now of a little bit of a Chinook, so some warm weather has come in. And basically, it's been a little bit of rain, plus 10. Most of the snow is gone. We're back to green grass. Looks like the only thing left is kind of little snow mountains, kind of just here and there. So again, it's kind of your typical Southern Ontario thing. We usually get this for about maybe a week or two, kind of midwinter. So this is a nice little change. Normally it's mid-January, but this is great. It's a nice little opportunity. I thought I would go down to the storage unit, switch out cars. So I dropped off my little Chevy Cruze there and pulled out my Jaguar to go for a little drive because the roads are relatively dry. Temperature is 10 degrees. Get everything moving, check the fluids, spray everything down with a little bit of WD-40, give it a quick little wash, essentially just take it out for the day and have a little fun with it, right? So my Jag is not what you describe as a show car. It would be a daily driver. In fact, it's more than capable of doing a winter. It's just one of those things where it's an older car. I have the opportunity to use a spare car if it's not on Turo. So I will drive those if they're not around. I don't really go anywhere on top of it. I basically work about 2 blocks away, so sometimes I'll walk to work as far as that's concerned. But it just allows me to put this into a space where I don't have to worry about road salt, ice, brush marks, that type of thing, right? So in Atwood and kind of all the tiny little towns that we have in this area, they utilize Goderich as a salt mine. So traditionally, at least this region is so heavily salted in the wintertime that cars don't typically last all that well. So it's something I noticed when I was working the service desk out in Goderich. It's one of those things where you go, ooh, that's a 4-year-old car. It looks like it's got 8 years of wear on it because they literally douse the roads with salt in the wintertime. So it's just one of those things where if you pull your car back in usage a little bit in the winter, and I have the opportunity to do that, so I put this car away, and that's the idea. And it's not again a show car or what I describe as mint out of the box, but it's a nice car. It's got about 80,000 kilometers on it. I bought it about 2 years ago. I still had the PT Cruiser at the time, so I ran the PT Cruiser predominantly through winter. So this is a change up from that. So that was kind of a way of getting into this vehicle. I paid a premium for it because it was kind of the COVID mess was going on. But at the time you're paying premiums for everything, and I was going, well, if I'm going to pay a premium for a car, at least in my mind, just the market had adjusted accordingly. I could either buy a Toyota Corolla or I could buy a Jag. So the logic alone kind of made sense, right? So And this is my second one. So I had a nice '07 a few years back. It kind of got passed down to my dad. So he liked the car, and it was like, okay, well, I'll go find something else, right? That one was that gray color, but it had kind of a bit of a blue or a purplish tint to the metallic, and that was factory. So certain lights, it kind of changed a little bit. It was a cool color as far as that's concerned. It didn't have the little leopard on the front, so it didn't have the little Jaguar thing on the hood. It had the little, I guess, inset emblem, and it had the grills on the front were like a mesh, so it looked a little bit more like a little sportier. I would guess they were going for. They were trying to make it look more like a Bentley, like the same type of grilling to it. So nice car. I liked it. It was kind of on my hit list to say, okay, I'm going to go out and buy another one at some point. And then this one came out available out in Windsor, and reluctantly I went down. At the time, I really didn't want to buy a car, but it was kind of like, it's got the kilometers. You know, I see them up on Kijiji all the time, but they're always like 170, 230, 300K. And this one had 72 at the time. So it's one of those things where I thought, okay, well, I should go at least take a look at it. And I thought I would go down there and lowball the guy. Like I thought, okay, it'll be bald tires, it'll be flat because it's been sitting forever and a day, and it'll be filthy and it'll look horrible, right? But I got there and it was very reasonable. He got it off of his friend. His friend had passed away, so I guess the estate had handed it off to him, which I guess is a nice little, hats off, to your buddy to say, hey, take care of my car. And it ended up, I think, in his garage or his driveway for an extended period of time. He really didn't drive it. The kilometers that were on it from kind of the service records that it came with show that he only put maybe 5,000 kilometers, if that, on it. So it sat for a long time. So I got down there, and the tires they're a couple of years old, but they're not the original tires. So he had replaced those. He did the brakes. He did a bunch of service to it. A couple of little things that were kind of neglectful. I guess he blew out a tire, and he ended up putting a cheap tire up, so the tires didn't match. But again, little nuisance things, right? Bumped into the bumper a couple times, and I scraped the one side, so they've been painted. And they were painted for cash, so that wasn't exactly the best job in the world, but not the worst either, right? One of those things where you kind of level expectation, right? Not a show car. So I ended up paying a premium for the car because it came with a stack of work orders. It looked presentable. It was drivable. It was a nice car. So it was one of those things where I will discount a car when I go look at it. I'll look at the wholesale values, and I'll look at the retail values, and I'll try and be in the middle. And then I'll start subtracting things and say, okay, well, it needs tires. I got to take $800 off that for tires. Well, in Ontario, it's more closer to $1,200, right, for a nice brand and kind of entry level, right? Or it's going to need an oil change and a tune-up, or it's going to need some body work. So then you start taking from there. But in this situation, the car was kind of a fair representation. So one of those things where it's kind of like, grudgingly, I bought it. It sounds funny. I was hoping I'd go down there and find out I was riddled with dents and dings and scratches and scuffs, and I could write it off and go, okay, done. But it's the wrong color. I didn't want a black one, but this is black. But again, it's rust free. I wanted to get something that was either like a Jaguar green or another silver one, or they look really sharp and white. Black was on the bottom list because it just requires a lot more maintenance. But so far, I've been really happy with it. So black interior. Again, I wanted to go with that. They do like it's kind of like a vanilla color. It looks really nice, and then it's got brown piping, and it was kind of on my wish list to go with like a blue or the Jaguar green with that interior, just bright and airy, right? So this is black, so it's completely opposite to exactly what I was looking for. But the interior was really nice, hadn't been smoked in, essentially original, right? So you can't go wrong with that. With the Jaguar product, the leather interior is a real leather. You don't see that a lot in the newer cars. What you're going to find is they're going to be either a bonded or a leatherette. And the reason they do that is it's more of a consistent product. It's going to have that same pattern to it every time, all the time, because it's a machined item, right? Whereas when you get into a car that has real leather, it's going to crack and fold, and it's going to weather, and it's going to look like an old leather reclining chair over time, right? And this had been clearly conditioned and maintained. So the guy really liked the car, right? So I got in, the interior's in decent shape. The piping looks good. The headrests are in nice shape. Nothing's been sun bleached. So it's like, okay, it's a car. I'm going to buy it, right? And I like the natural leather. I like vintage cars, but I can't afford a vintage car, right? So I can't go and buy myself a mid-60s car and go, okay, let's do that as a daily or as kind of a car. It's not realistically going to be the case, right? So when I get in here, I get that nice whiff of real leather, which is something that you normally find in either a classic car, you're moving up exponentially into lineups, like you're getting into a Bosec, or you're getting into a car that's kind of a handcrafted item, right? So this isn't that. I'm not saying that by any stretch of the imagination, but it's one of those things where you just kind of go in and go, wow. Back in the day, I had a neighbor that had a Mercedes that was from the 70s, I think 71, 72, and it was a little 500 convertible, and her car, when you get into it, it had that really nice Mercedes smell to it. The carpet in here is a standard Ford carpet, so however, the mats are done up in a wool. So, and again, that's a lot of the older cars were done with horsehair, or they were done with a wool carpet, or that everything was kind of along that line. So there's an odor to it. There's a smell on those older cars because it's got a little bit of wool in the carpeting. It's got that nice little wet wool smell to it. Doesn't have a horsehair in there, but you know it has the smell of an older car, right? So I like that. And again, it's kind of one of those tactile feelings, and then you get the senses, right? Wood, and a lot of people have that debate online whether or not the Jaguar X-Types are real wood. So yes, it is a real wood, and it is basically the same thing you do with any other car that would have real wood in it, which is pretty rare in today's modern marketplace, right? So it's got a finish on it that needs to be taken care of. This one is nice. It hasn't cracked. There's no sun bleaching to it. It's a nice, clean example of what it would be, right? So again, that's why I like the car. Back in the day, I worked at a Mitsubishi store, and the boss there, Amin, had managed to take a liking to the Jaguar product, and we'd actually do a fair bid on trade-ins, so we'd get a fair bit of these X-Types. I think we had 3 or 4 of them come through while I was there. We had the XJs come in a couple times. So I got a pretty good taste of the Jaguar product in, strangely enough, a Mitsubishi store. And so I take one home every once in a while, or out in the lot, you just check it out, that type of thing. And I was always impressed by this particular vehicle. Now, it's essentially a Ford underneath, so it means it's a Ford 3-liter. Very common engine. It's a timing chain. No maintenance required on that. It's an easy car to work on. It's got a couple of spots where you're going to bang your knuckles. Like if you have to replace the light bulb on the front, it's a pain in the butt. It is, because the ABS gear is all there. So it's got some little quirks from the design of the car to make it look like a Jag. They've kind of fit a few things in from Ford with it. But everything I've had to do on it has been fairly straightforward, other than like quirky little things like aging out plastics, a couple hoses, but nothing that would break the bank or cause any major issues. Part supplies are relatively easy because I can cross-reference a lot of the components with Ford. So like I can't get a Ford headlight to work, but I can find the bulb is essentially a standard Ford bulb. Like it's an easy car to find the things that you're going to consume. Pretty straightforward with it. So get it up in the air. None of the pinch welds have been crushed, which I can appreciate. If you ever worked on a car, a lot of times the technician will fold in. So when they do the hoist, they'll put the little feet up, and then they'll end up crushing all the little pinch welds on the bottom of the car when they lift it. This one hasn't had that. So again, whoever serviced the car, and to the most part it was the Jaguar dealership, took the time to put a little rubber pad on and take care of the vehicle. So it hasn't spent a lot of time in, I would describe as like a Bob's Garage when they're doing big volume cars and they just want to get them in and get them out. Those guys tend to just put them in and lift them up. They don't care. right? Just one of those things, in and out, right? So the undercarriage is nice and rust-free. Trying to keep it that way. Got a nice set of Continental tires. I picked those up for it, kind of just updated. So that was kind of nice. Didn't have to do the brakes because they already did that. But I did a brake service and a few other little things, just kind of in the driveway as we're kind of moving along. So again, a car you can actually physically work on. OB2 system, again, uses all Ford codes. So it's one of those things where plug in a standard code reader, no mystery. So that's one of those things that I like about the car. Heated seats are very comfortable. These are a really nice seating position to them as well. So it's one of those things, if you're out there looking at them, you kind of go, is it a luxury top-end car? No, but it's kind of that mid-range type deal. So it would be like a bread and butter. I put this like up against a Lincoln, as far as that's concerned, right? So it's a nice car from that standpoint. Gauges, they got the little Jaguar logo. I like that. They're all in black. They look like they're a bit of a throwback, so I like that styling, kind of cue to it. Layout, as far as all the switches and the J-gate, again, very comfortable from that standpoint. I am 5'9". When my seat's in the right position, there's more than enough room in the back seat for anybody. I don't usually have companions to go back there, but it's a roomy car from that standpoint. It would be the equivalent to a Toyota Camry, size-wise in the interior. Trunk space is a little bit weird because the trunk is kind of pulls back a little bit and it kind of tapers. So when you open the trunk up, it's tapered and it's kind of got a little shallow into it. So it's not really designed to. I kind of found that out I go to estate auctions and buy art supplies. So I buy old canvases and I repurpose and use them. The PT Cruiser was nice because you open it up and it's basically a station wagon. Whereas this one with the seats, they fold down because it's the upper level. But because the way the trunk is shaped, it's really hard to fit something in there. So it's one of those things you kind of go, okay, it's not designed for that. And on my wish list, or my someday, if I ever come across one, I've been looking for a nice, clean X-Type wagon, which in the Canadian market, I think they sold 4. So there's not a lot of them out there. There was one that was available in Thunder Bay. That's going back about a year ago, but the guy was out to lunch on pricing, and he was unrealistic. So he wanted a premium for a car, which I get it. You're looking for the guy that really wants it, which is fine. But I think it's me, and that I think I'm the only one that really likes these cars. I don't see a lot of them out there. I don't see anyone really talking about them so much. So I think I'm really the market for it. And I talked to him a little bit on the phone there, and he wanted like $8,000, and then it was 11, then it was 12 because it was such an exotic car. I'm trying to explain to him it's a Ford Fusion underneath. Like it's not a rolling classic yet. You want to get classic money for a car that isn't in that category at that point, and it needed work. It was one of those things where, just do a transmission flush, it'll be fine. It's like, that's not how that works. If there's a transmission problem, flushing it is not going to resolve that issue. It may be a band-aid for a little while, but it's not going to resolve it. So it was one of those things I just kind of dropped that one. So there was another one in the GTA in like a nice silver, but it was the base car, no roof. Leather though, because in the Canadian market they don't bring in the front-wheel drive cloth interiors. They just bring in, I guess, upper mid-levels. So that one was around, but that was one of those things where it was just timing. It sounded like a decent car. It looked okay as far as the photos were concerned. Had that little patina. It's just a daily, and oil changes were done, but the basic maintenance, nothing beyond that. So it probably needed to go a good go through. So it probably seals and gaskets and things along that line. But I've been on the hunt for that. There was one out and I almost made a trip to PEI. So there's one there that got traded in, and it was a nice one. It was in black. Again, not my favorite color, but it was the black metallic. It had some real high kilometers on it, so clearly somebody was running it, but it hadn't stopped. They were continuing, and it had a stack of repair bills already done, like all maintenance up to date and current. The back of my head, I was going, you know what? Even with the high K, oiled twice a year. The gentleman who took it on trade gave me a call, and we had a little discussion about it. Nice older gentleman. He used it for, I guess, sales, and he needed the the wagon for the back to be able to put kit and gear in, and it sounded like a really nice car. The price was, well, it was inappropriate for what the car was, but one of those things where there's not much to pick from, and I almost made the trip to go get that one, but then I was like, I'm working, I didn't have time to do it, right? So still on the hunt for a wagon. It's on the hit list, but it's one of those things where if I come across it someday, I'll come across it, right? So that's my Jaguar X-Type. Things that I like about it, I like the layout. I don't have the nav system, so I don't have the weird little screen. I've got the standard. It's the upper level. It's the Alpine system, so it's got good audio to it. Like, it's very nice. It's got the changer in the back for the CDs, which I know sounds dated, and it is, but it's loaded and it's with the music I like, so cool as far as that's concerned. Bluetooth, it doesn't have that, but I put in a little aftermarket module. I hid it behind one of the vents, so you don't physically see it, and it just kind of keys on the phone, and it works really well. Drawback to it is because it's kind of on the vents, you have to turn the automated climate control down a little bit if you're on full tilt. Otherwise, it sounds like you're in an aviation hangar. But again, it's kind of what you do with an older car. You kind of work around it. I didn't want to rip everything out, put an aftermarket unit in. I like the factory look. I like the dashboard looks great. Everything on the car is very, very easy and accessible. So let's do a little walk around on the exterior, and I'll show you what it looks like on the outside.